Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Susanne McNinch and Chez Filippini.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. Chez and I are in the studio here today talking about the fourth spiritual work of mercy, and we have the pleasure of having Mr. Anthony Pinto with us today, and we're going to be talking about comforting the sorrowful. And but as always, if you haven't, please check out our last episode where we Bishop and Father Kevin McEwen talked about counseling the doubtful. It was a great episode, so please check it out. But we're excited to be here today with you, Anthony. Thank you so much for saying yes and coming on our podcast.
You're welcome.
Yeah, terrific.
Thanks, Anthony. So we were going over the show, just kind of what we do here. We always start out with the first line of the document. The podcast is named after Gaudium et Spes, and it goes like this. The joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the men in this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the followers of Christ. That's my line. I've done it 96 times now. What are we on here? But you'll hear, in that line, what's going on, basically. Joys, hopes, griefs, anxieties, anything going on in your life right now?
There's been some joys recently.
Yep.
My older son in May of 23 graduated with his pharmacy degree.
Okay.
So that was pretty good. He got through his residency in last year in July. Now he's a clinical pharmacist over at Community Health here in Pensacola. So that's nice. And my younger son's in town too, and fairly successful business person. So those are some nice joys. Got a lot of friends and family around. So we do that. My career at the University of West Florida is going real well as well, teaching and getting involved in other things.
Excellent.
Terrific.
We talk about our kids all the time on here, and we're all just like, oh, they're going to make it. They're going to make it. And you're enjoying those moments.
Yeah, I am enjoying
right
the
now.
fruits, right?
Yeah.
Definitely are.
Very
Terrific.
good. Cool.
Nice.
Lucky, but happy.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
Oh. Suzanne, it's
I'm excited. Baseball season.
That's right. That's right.
Spring training.
Yankees.
Red Sox, not the Yankees, not the Rays. Anyway, no, it's good. It's just it just gives me such joy knowing that, that here we are. We're barreling through the winter. I mean, we've had a pretty rough one here in Pensacola, pretty unexpected one here in Pensacola, but we're moving into the spring and, just a lot of fun that comes with it. We got spring break coming up for all the kids.
Right. Yep.
So lots of things on the horizon. So I'm very hopeful and very joyful.
There we go.
Yes.
I'm going to go sports this time.
Okay.
We've talked about soccer so many times. My favorite as a bandwagon American fan team in the world is Liverpool. Liverpool is on the march for their first league title in 5 years. So it's fun. I don't know if anyone watches soccer or is part of the culture or anything. It's a unique version of following a team and fandom, even from across the ocean. Just a lot of culture and background and a lot of joy. A lot of foul language, a lot of sometimes, the brawling days are over and stuff. But yeah, anyhow, if there's any fellow Liverpool supporters out there, we're going to win the title.
Who ended up winning it last year?
So last year was Manchester City, as they've done 6 of the last 7 years. But they're having a downer, and we're catching them on the downer and going straight past them. And it's been fun. So.
Terrific.
The joys of sports.
Yes.
Most of the time.
The joys and sorrows.
Exactly. Do you want to review any teams for you, Anthony?
Oh, yeah. Yankee fan for sure. Forever. And a Giant fan. So there's the joys and the sorrows.
As an Eagles fan, sorry about Saquon.
Yeah, I don't
Thank you. It's been.
I like Saquon. But
it's hard to hold a grudge against him.
No,
but,
he seems like a good guy. But
and I hear a bit of an accent. Are you born and bred New Yorker?
Bridgeport, Connecticut. So just about 50 so miles from Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
My dad was a true Yankee fan. He actually saw Babe Ruth play back in the day.
Very fun.
Nice.
And Joe DiMaggio was one of his favorite players.
Cool. Well, let's get to know you. We invited you in here. You're a local parishioner at St. John the Evangelist here in town.
Correct.
But where'd you grow up? Bridgeport, Connecticut. Your faith background. Yeah.
Sure. My grandparents came from Italy, in the immigration in the early 1900s. And my mother and father were both raised Italian. First language was Italian. And they were all my mom was very devout Catholic, so was my dad. We went to church every Sunday. Initially at St. Raphael's, which was in the kind of Little Italy of Bridgeport. And then when we lived out in the outskirts, and then we switched to a closer church, but we always went to Catholic church. Raised my sons Catholic. I was in the Marine Corps for 20 years, so we kind of moved around. But we always went to church. We settled here. We came here in 96. Had some friends here, so we went to St. Anne's Bellevue up on Softly. And they got involved in that. They were altar servers, and my wife was helped with the youth club, the youth group, and stuff like that. And we did scouts up there and stuff. So that's kind of that part of it. And just always gone to church and been a Catholic. And then my wife passed away in 2020. And I connected back with Father John. He was at St. Anne's for a while, and I liked him. And a friend of mine went to high school with him, and she's a nurse. And when she heard about Charlene was on hospice, she called me and mentioned that Father John was back in the area. And so I contacted him, and he came up and, gave her the anointing of the sick. I was going to say last rites, but they don't call it that anymore. And then we started connecting, and we talked, and he helped me out a lot. And, so I decided to come to church because I liked him. So even though I live in Cantonment, I drive down to St. John's every week. And then I got involved as a catechist, and then started the GriefShare program there.
Cool. Terrific. But you're also, so thank you for your service in the Marine Corps.
Sure.
And, but you're also teaching at UWF right now, is that correct?
Yeah. I'm a faculty member in computer science and cybersecurity. I've been there 23 years.
Wow.
So pretty heavily invested up there, advisor of the cyber club, and do a bunch of other things too.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's a lot of fun. I really like teaching. Most of the time it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's similar to being in the Marine Corps to an extent, and the mentorship that you get to exert and things like that is, and giving back to your community.
Yes.
I mean, that's very
There are some similarities. There's a lot of similarities. The biggest difference, though, is in a Corps, you showed up 10 to 15 minutes early for a meeting. Sometimes faculty meetings, people don't show up till 10 minutes after it's supposed to start. So how do you get used to that?
Yeah.
We've had so many veterans and active duty service members. Susanne is obviously a Navy veteran. The Marine Corps is a choice. Did you as the first memories you had as a kid, you're just like, I want to be a Marine, or was it a discernment process? Did you kind of fall into it?
I kind of just fell into it. I wasn't doing well. I was going to college, and then started doing things that young men do in college and not go to class and have a good time. And so I saw a few commercials, and it seemed like maybe I should do that, get myself straightened out. So I was only going to stay 3 years, get some money for education, and go back, and it turned into a 20-year career.
Wow.
So it was kind of by accident, but probably one of the best things, except for marrying my wife, which she reminded me of often. That's one of, she always said, best thing that ever happened to you. But other than that, she used to tease me about that.
Well, tell us, how did you meet Charlene?
We met in high school.
Okay.
We had groups of friends that we knew, and I was dating I dated a few other people in that group, and then we kind of got connected, and we dated for a while. She went to my senior prom, and then I graduated. She was a year behind me. And then by some silly reason, after a year or so, I decided to break up with her, and we broke up. And I was in college, and I was doing other things. And then at some point, I decided, you know what, that was pretty stupid. She's the best one. So I tried to get back with her, and she didn't take me back right away.
She made you work for it, right?
She gave me a hard time for a while. And then eventually we got back together, and I asked her to marry me.
Oh, beautiful.
So,
well, so Charlene is kind of, I got to know you just briefly over the phone, Anthony, a few years ago as you were looking to start the GriefShare ministry. And so we're in the spiritual works of mercy. And this one is one that I think there's basically no one that is untouched by the reality of grief through loved ones and stuff. It's not a very common ministry, though. We do it as Christians just because we need to. We're human beings and we find, but you found there's a kind of a place for a more formal effort to have this available. So I don't know if you want to tell us about your experience and that call to comfort folks.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a long story, but Char was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, like August or so. And so we went through all the process of, chemo and stuff and surgery. And then she was cancer-free in like January of that year, the end of January, beginning of February. So it just went through, after that, just checkups and scans and stuff. Mm-hmm. And things seemed to be going okay. And then January of 2020, she had a clean scan and everything was good. Mm-hmm. And in May, she wasn't feeling well. And she went back and the cancer had just taken over the liver pretty much. Mm-hmm. And the only explanation was, well, it could have been there before. It just was too soft for us to see. Anyway, so we were in the hospital like 6-7 times between the beginning of January and when she came home July 11th and hospice, and she passed on the 17th of July. And so, I don't know. I was going through a lot of stuff and trying to deal with everything. And it was just unexpected, really. Mm-hmm. And just listening to people talk and some stuff, I just realized I needed something and not just individual counseling. Mm-hmm. So I started looking for a group. Actually, Covenant Hospice had one, but it was COVID, so it was a phone call, which was okay. Mm-hmm. So I was looking around and checking around, and I found GriefShare was at Olive Baptist, and it was face-to-face. So GriefShare is a national program. It's very well organized. They have like a 3-part thing. There's a video, there's discussion, there's even a book they give you that you can work through each week. It's 13 sessions. So I went there face to face, and it was very helpful. Slowly, but it was helpful. Mm-hmm. So I stuck with it for I went through 2 sessions, I think. They're 13 weeks. If I'm going too long, you can certainly interrupt me.
This is it, the meat and potatoes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, the woman that was leading it had an assistant. Well, she left unexpectedly to take another job. And so her assistant took over, and this lady was kind of overwhelmed. And so I was helping her. So it was my second or this end of my second or beginning of my third time through. And I started helping her with the administrative stuff of making sure people and stuff. And then I found as we split the groups that just my experiences of how I dealt with it were helping new people. They're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And it just sort of naturally fit into it of this role that I really wasn't real happy that I was good at, but it seemed like I was decent at helping. So I stuck with that for a few more times. I went through 5 times actually, but pretty much 3 times were as an assistant. And then I just thought, well, why can't I just go to Father John and see? And so I went to him, and he said, yeah, let's do this. And it's a little bit of an expense because you have to buy the DVDs and books and stuff. But so we started it at St. John's in the fall of 22. And I usually just do one in the fall, one in the spring for the last 4 years, 3.5 years so far. And that's so how I kind of got started in it. And I'm not really, I tell the people too, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not really trained in this. Just facilitate. You talk about my experiences, kind of like maybe you see on TV, like somebody that does like AAA or something like that, right? You just kind of get people to talk and you watch the videos, and because generally speaking, people that are in grief really just want to talk and express themselves and have people listen and share experiences. They don't really want to be talked to. And they really don't want to hear platitudes. That's almost the worst thing you can tell somebody. It's like, oh, you'll get over it, or just worry about it in time, you'll be fine, or she's in a better place. And, I mean, that's all true. Yeah. You just, at that point, you're in such emotional upheaval. You don't, even the first time when I went through GriefShare, I was thinking, well, these people are talking about, I'm never going to feel better. It's just not going to fix me. But it does. You just have to kind of let it, as I said, incremental, very small, like just a little tick in the armor of one thing and then something else, and eventually.
Can you give us, maybe a little bit more detail about the program itself? Like,
sure.
So, how do you start out and take STD?
So it's a national organization. There's a website, GriefShare.org. And if you're looking for it, you can actually go there and there's a find the group button. You just put in your zip code, you click a button, and it'll show you all the grief shares that are active within maybe 50 miles, and you can expand that. And it'll show you the date, the time, when they started and when they end. And even if they're in the middle, it's not like progressive. If you wanted to use, it's 13 weeks. If you found one that was in week 6, that's fine because it works. You don't have to start at the beginning. And then if you get into a program, they kind of look at it as a 3-phased attack. There's the videos, which are really, really professionally well done. They have experts. They have people that have been through grief. The 2 people that lead it lost 2 children, and it's very Christian based too. It's there's a lot of, it's not completely, and you don't have to be a Christian or Catholic to get, and they don't ask you to be, but it's just, they do talk a lot about the Bible and things like that and God, but not exclusively. And, the other part is there's actually a book that goes along with each week that you can take notes as you outline, but there's also exercises, things that you can think of, like one of the weeks they talk about taking care of yourself, and they use the DEAR principle, which is drink, eat, exercise, and rest. And in the book, they give you things about, okay, if you're not sleeping, these are some of the things you can do. Here's how you should eat right. That's just one example. And even in the book, too, at the beginning, there's an assessment of what your emotions are at the beginning. And then they ask you maybe in a couple months, go back with a different color and look and see which emotions you check, see what's different. Because it's a process you don't realize. Maybe you're getting better, but you don't realize it unless you see it. And then the last part is there's group discussion questions at the beginning from last week, and there's group discussion questions after the video that kind of prompt people to talk about different aspects of how they're feeling and how they're dealing with things and stuff like that. So, it's a very good program. It doesn't cost a lot. And the website, you can see the videos after the class. They're up there, so if you want to review them or if you miss a class. And there's other videos and other content and resources and discussion boards and stuff. So. We were sharing before the show, and I've shared on the podcast, my dad passed away in January, and, he's not the first family member I've lost. But it's definitely the first time where it's like, oh, this is different, and it seems like you probably have lost family members before your wife, but the experience of like when grief comes on as a thing that you haven't encountered before at this level, is there any preparation that's possible, or is like grief just comes at you on its own terms sometimes? That kind of what you've experienced and seen in this scenario? It's really something you have to, like the grief that I experienced in my life is something I never experienced before. My mom and dad passed. Char's mom and dad had passed. And they're sad, and they were older. My mom was kind of young, but even like my son say, Dad, we're sad Mom's gone, but you saw her every day. We didn't see her every day. And, they're just your husband or spouse is such an integral part of your life. So it's different. I'm not sure there's much preparation per se, because it's an emotion, and, it's like, how do you prepare for having kids? You can do things, but you don't really realize what it's like until you have them. The thing I would say, as I try to tell people, is you never know when it's going to happen. So whoever this person is that you love, try to love them well every day. If it's your wife, do everything you can to make her happy. And if it's your husband, do the same thing. It bugs me sometimes when I see friends and wives, and they've been married and they argue and they snap at each other, and you can't really say much, but you feel like saying it could be worse. So maybe there is a way to prepare. I don't know. Even if you know it ahead of time, there's people in the grief group that know their husband had cancer or wife, and they're going to die within a year. You could do stuff while they're alive for sure, but once they're gone, it doesn't seem to matter if they died instantly or if you knew about it. It's still pretty close to the same thing. The shock may be initially different, but other than that, the process is the same.
Interesting. You mentioned, as we talk about the activity of comforting the sorrowful, you mentioned platitudes are not helpful. And in your experience with different people coming in, so I don't know if you want to get into more details. Sure. A lot of us, we turn to platitudes or simple gestures because we're just like, I don't know what else to do or say. It seems worse to say nothing. Is it worse to say nothing? Is it worse to say something sometimes or reach out?
We do talk about that, and and we realize people are just trying to be hopeful.
Yeah.
And I probably did the same thing. It seems like really the only thing you can say is that I'm sorry, and not too much after that. But what you can do is rather than offer help, be helpful. In other words, show up with a meal and bring them a meal. Maybe they'll invite you in, maybe they won't. Or just go to them, call them up, or, hey, we're going out to dinner tonight. You want to come? Or we're going to a ball game, or go over there if you know them. Let's go for a walk, or let's go get a cup of coffee. And even if you don't talk to them, you're just there, and they'll talk to you. But if you ask me, like, what could I do for you? I don't know. I mean, just especially at the beginning, you're just so lost. And you realize people say that, and then maybe they won't help. Or I'm not saying they won't help, but they're just kind of being so. Yeah, like I said, just say you're sorry, and then just be there for them in any way that you can. Because as everybody knows, what happens at the beginning when the funeral and everybody's around, and then they all disappear because they get back to their life, and you have to get back to a life too. But I had some very close friends that really, really helped me out a lot. They have a grown son, and he would invite me over to hang out with his daughters. And then this friend would call me up. We'd go to dinner and play golf together. And it was just very useful, very helpful for me. So that's, I guess, what would be my advice.
Grief never goes away. It just is it a fair statement to say it gets easier over time, or you become more accepting of it over time? You started out as a student in this course, and now you're a facilitator. I'm sure you've learned a lot about yourself and your grief throughout this entire process. Are you better today than you were 5 years ago?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. Depends on how you define grief. In the program, they talk about grief from mourning to joy. And if you technically define grief, it's that kind of constant, almost overwhelming thing that you deal with when it first happens. At some point, you do get past that, okay? It's not as often. It's not as overwhelming. Like at first, I was like overwhelmed with, she took care of like stuff around the house, like when we paint, when we put carpeting, when we do this. And I just thought, how am I going to do that? I never even bought clothes, really. She bought all my clothes for 40 years. I was like, how do I buy clothes? And at the beginning, it's like, I ain't going to be able to do all it. You figure it out after a while. It's not really that complicated stuff. And even women say, well, my husband took care of all the construction around the house and the car and this and that. But they'll figure it out. So, you get past that, and you have your moments, right? They call it in GriefShare, they call it ambushes of grief ambushes, or ambushes of grief, and that happens even now. But like an example for me was, I don't know, it was a year or two after she was passed, and I was driving down like 9 Mile, getting ready to go home, and I saw a sign that said estate sale. Well, Charlotte loved to go to estate sales, right? That was her thing. I'd play golf on Saturday, and most times she had a map and go to estate sales. And I saw it, and my first thought, I got to tell Char about that, right? Well, that was the instant thought, and then, a second later, it's like, oh, she's never going again. And it hits you, you tear up, and I had to pull over for a second. And and that still happens sometimes, not as often. And we laugh and we talk about mom or her with her friends, and we laugh about her. So you can get to that point. So the sorrow never goes away. You can be sad, but what you have to watch out for is if somebody's still in heavy grief 3-4 years, and like they can't take her picture, they can't take her clothes away, and then that may be a problem. Something. There's no real number, but there is a time when, like, I visit her grave every day, and like they talk about that in the program too. That may be an issue where maybe somebody needs some additional help. So hopefully I answered what you were asking.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like that weird tension of get back to your life, stay busy, embrace what you have, but yet our hearts, like, we feel a profound allegiance and connection that
you can feel guilty.
Just exactly. That it's I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've had these moments where like, I'm not thinking about my dad enough, or like I'm not calling, my uncle who's like the last living brother, or I should visit where my dad's now laid to rest up in Pennsylvania, where we're from originally. I should go up there more often, or I should do this or that or the other thing. It's like that weird, it's not survivor's guilt, because it's, that's an entirely different category usually. But yeah, that connection just doesn't get erased. It's there to be cherished. And so I don't know if you can talk about that kind of cherishing the connection that you will always have, and learning to rejoice in that.
Yeah, definitely. You learn things, and you kind of realize that you could be angry at God, right? And I heard a quick story. I forget the guy's last name, but Mitch, he was a sports writer, and he was on a show, and he was talking about how him and his wife had adopted this girl, but she was, like, when she was 7, she had cancer, and he had enough money, so he flew her everywhere to get her cancer, and she died, and he lost faith. And he was talking to, I don't know if a clergyman or something, and he was telling him, why did God do that? Just a little girl, why did he have to do that? And he said, you're asking the wrong question. It's not why did he do it. He said, why did he give you those 2 years with that little girl and that joy? And that kind of turned me to say, why did God give me the almost 41 plus years with Char? And I'm not saying that fixes it, because that's not the only thing, but that helps.
Okay.
And there's 2 things that I realized early on that I don't know if it was divine intervention, but one was, what would she want from me, right? And she's there and she sees me, and we talked about it a lot, so it wasn't like I didn't know what she would want. She would want me to be happy just like I want her to be happy. And also, if roles were reversed, what would I want for her? And, it's kind of a funny story, I don't know, but my aunt was 90, and she passed away in September of 2019. So when I came home, we were talking about it. My older son was there. We were just talking about stuff and that and what we wanted. And, I said, yeah, well, I'd want Mom to be happy if she wanted to, because she always said she wouldn't date probably if we passed. As you're married, you talk about stuff. I said, and my son, really, Dad, you'd be okay with that? And I said, yeah, I'd be okay. It's fine. I want her to be happy if she found somebody. I said, as long as she waited, and she goes, yeah, I'd give you like 2 weeks. I said, just 2 weeks? And she said, okay, a month. But so you kind of talk about that stuff. Yeah. And I knew what she would want. It's just still hard to get past it, and not instantly, but those things, they kind of pop into your head, and at least they kill the emotion, the grief sometimes, and it's just little things as you go through over the months that just, you get better without realizing it gradually. There's no, you get better just because of one thing. It's time and dealing with it. The worst thing you can do is not deal with it, I think, because you have to, sometimes people don't want to experience it, so they do things like spend time doing all this other stuff, right? Or ignore it rather than they're afraid to feel the emotion. And I think you have to go through it and just cry and let your body cry. And when it happens, let it happen, and it's over with. Then the next time it comes, just let it go again, and just keep doing that. Instead of, they even talk about it in the program. It's like, if you hold it in, it's coming out some way. We kind of know that. It may not come out in grief. It's going to come in anger, frustration, abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, something.
Wow. So. The Bible has a lot of references, to this. One that stood out to me was Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, that says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Anthony, you grew up Catholic, you professed your faith, you attended Mass, you did all those things. Do you feel closer to God now? Do you pray more often? How has your faith changed through this journey of yours?
Yeah, it has. I told Father John that when I first did, I felt almost have more faith. Mm-hmm. A strange thing happened, and I told him about this, but we were in the hospital the last time, and we didn't know that they were done, right? And she was, because of the way the liver acts, and it was underperforming, it caused toxins that kind of can cause like delirium and stuff. So sometimes she was lucid, other times she was like, so she goes to me and we're talking and she goes, are we ready for the trip on the 17th? This is July. And I'm like, what trip? Yeah, the trip. And I said, okay, yeah, we're all set, right? And I can't think of any time we ever went on a trip. So anyway, she passes, and the next day I'm typing up the eulogy to send, and I said, what date did she die? And I look and it was the next day, and I said the 18th. So she had passed on the 17th, and I'm like, what is that, right? So, and I was talking to Father John, and I said, I really miss her. I want to be close to her. And one of the things he told me that I still keep is, well, when you get communion, you're taking in Jesus, and she's sitting right next to him. So if you want to talk to her when you get communion, and every time I get communion, I think of that, and I try to, so. And I light a candle for her every week at church, and I pray a lot. And, I did my bargaining with God when she first passed too, or before she died, and even after she died, but, so.
Yeah.
It's real, unfortunately.
Right. That's Christianity more than anything else. What does St. Paul say? He says, we're fools if Christ is not raised from the dead. Like, ultimately, it comes down to, like, is God capable of overcoming death? Because, like, that was the sensation is, like, death is truly like this wall. It is like this insurmountable, like, you have a love, you have a connection, you have a relationship, and you want to continue it. And it's like this thing is just like, it's over. It's like, it just comes down. And it's like, and then we're left as Christians with this, like, but dang it, there's a way through, and there's like a hope in the end. And I don't know if you can comment on just sort of what you've seen in people. Like, we talked about platitudes, saying something like they're in a better place a little, but I mean, that faith in the resurrection, that faith in heaven, that faith in eternal life, that faith in being able to see this person once again, it does make a difference, right?
It does.
Like, yeah. I don't know.
It does, I think. Thinking that they're there, believing that they're there. Mm-hmm. And they even, one lady mentioned this in the videos, but I don't want to die.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid to die because I feel like I get to see Char again and be with her. I'm not in any rush. I'm not thinking about anything else. But so it does help in that respect. Mm-hmm. And I've always believed that. God has helped me throughout my life in a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a little bit off topic, but they talk about why did God do this? And the thing that got me with that was they say, well, even if He told you, would it really make a difference? Mm-hmm. Like, they're still gone. They're still not here. Even if God explained to you why this person had to pass, it's not going to fix anything. Right. So you kind of just, it's hard not to think about, but it's something that you kind of can put aside. Like, it happened.
That's an interesting
and we're not really ready to understand. So,
Well, this was, what a necessary ministry. We have bereavement ministries in our parishes that help people through funerals. And we have wonderful liturgical ministers who you don't really see how much they do for people in this time of crisis until they arise. But the necessity of kind of walking with people long term, especially if they're isolated, especially if they don't have a network of people. A parish can sometimes be the only thing, a church community. Maybe to leave on that there, for anybody that's maybe feeling an urge or a call, in the end, you're just a facilitator. There's plenty of programs out there. Is it as easy as talk to your priest and see if there's an opportunity at your parish if you want to get started?
Correct. Yeah, it has to come from a church or that type of, like, an individual can't sign up. They won't let you buy GriefShare. So it has to be part of some type of church. And then that's pretty much it. You talk to them, and the website's there, and there's costs. You have to pay for the DVDs. And then the books also cost. And some churches maybe charge people, ask for a donation. We don't. But that's pretty much it. And they have training, too. Like, there's video training of how to be a facilitator. They give you a book, and they have help desk you can call and ask questions or get connected with, like, a mentor, if you will, that kind of thing. So it's really not too hard. We had a couple people come from Nativity a couple of years ago. One of the ladies was in my group, but she went up there because they didn't have one. And then I think he was from their council, came down and sat through a class. And then they started one up there, Nativity by the university. I don't know if they still do it or not, but they had one. So. And it's not just Catholic churches, obviously. Right. A lot of the Baptists and other churches. And it doesn't really matter. Like, I went to Olive Baptist, and people are like, hey, do they try to convert you? And I said, it never came up. Right. It never. In fact, there was guys in there. One guy was like, I don't really believe in God. And nobody blinked an eye. We're just trying to help you. So, we don't really, it's very ministry focused and Christian focused. And there's parts of that in there. It's not, but it's not a requirement.
If we have folks who are listening or know of people who might want to participate, how's the best way to sign up for this class or get in touch with you, and when's the next session and things like that?
We meet on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock in the St. John's Meeting House, 6 to 8. The best way to look for a program and to look for mine is just go to GriefShare.org. And on the front page, it's find a group, and you can just put in a zip code. And St. John's zip code, I think, is 32508. But wherever you live, and they'll list them all, including mine. And then you just click that, and you can actually pre-register. You can fill out your name and like or email address, name, and phone number, and it'll send me or who's ever in charge. And usually it's like, do you want to approve this person? And usually you will, unless you know something different. And then what happens there is it gives them the information, but also, as you go through the weeks, the videos are available to anyone on that list. So if you're like in it and you missed a week, you can go back and at least watch the video and maybe do the workbook. So
terrific.
Amazing.
It's a great program.
I don't know, we know each other super well, but if I was going in that situation, I want to see a face like yours, hear a voice like yours. Just have that receptivity about you in a sense of kind of, it's weird. God gifts us with certain ways of being in the world that are meant for certain graces to be offered to other people. So I think you're in the right place.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your time with us, Anthony. What an amazing work that you're doing. The spiritual work of mercy is so necessary.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Hopefully it'll help somebody.
Absolutely. That is our hope. Well, guys, we continue forward in our series on the spiritual works of mercy. Bishop Walk's coming up next in 2 weeks' time to talk about the spiritual work of mercy of praying for the living and the dead. And he's going to offer a teaching, especially on that latter part, praying for the dead, the Catholic teaching on purgatory, which is so often a misunderstood or not clearly thought out or understood teaching in our church. And he's going to lay it out for us. So we'll see you back here in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumetspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.